Hello, everyone. Welcome to another jam-packed, fun, exciting episode of your favorite aquarium podcast, the Tank Talk Podcast. My name is John Hudson with KG Tropicals. I'm here with Jason from Primetime Aquatics. Jason, we got an exciting one. I know we say that about all of them, but today's going to be fun. Tell everybody, I'm going to follow the rules this time. What is it that we're talking about today?
We're going to be talking about fashion trends in fish keeping, pants,
Yes!
shirts. Oh, yeah. Not fashion trends, but we are going to be talking about trends in fish keeping. John, this is something you came up with, and so I can't wait to hear like where your mind is going with this, because guys, we just kind of talk. We don't really have like a massive, here's my outline right there. Check it out. That is deep and profound. So we just kind of do this thing. So I can't wait to see where this goes. But before we get into it, we do need to thank our channel sponsor, Fritz Aquatics, fritzaquatics.com. We're very happy that they support this channel and KG Tropicals and Primetime Aquatics because they're awesome. And we can see some of the reasons why they're awesome. John is holding up not only the Fritz Complete, which is a great dechlorinator, it neutralizes ammonia and nitrite as well, but probably the product that made them who they are today, and that is the Fritz Zyme 7. That is the live nitrifying bacteria that is awesome for a new tank, especially one that has got brand new filter media. You put that bad boy in there, and guess what? You're going to avoid those ammonia nitrite spikes, provided that you stock the tank appropriately, and you'll be able to put fish in right away. Always get that question. How long should I wait to put fish in? As long as it takes you to go get a bottle of Fritz Zyme 7. That's how long. So that's the new answer.
There you go. Love it.
It's a new old trend. So today, trends. What do you got for us? Where do you want to start this conversation?
Well, unlike you, I am not nearly the professional you are, so I do need to work off of notes, but my notes are quite literally 8 words. I just have a few words jotted down. 5 good trends and 4 not so good. Dare I say bad. So I'd like to put this on you and ask you, do you want to start with a good or a bad? We can have fun either way.
Well, how many? You said you have more goods than bads?
I do.
Well, let's start with the goods then. That way we can alternate and we don't depress people right from the start like we probably did with the podcast about social media.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about how it's ruining your life. So we'll have a good trend first, and then we'll talk about a trend that's ruining your life.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the bad ones are life-threatening, horribly terrible bad ones, but they're certainly trends that I've seen, and I want to clarify here, or not clarify, but I want to put this out there. My list of things here is based on the time that I've been in this hobby, which has been a very long time. You a little bit longer than me. But I'm not talking about trends that are currently happening as we speak. I'm going all the way back to even, the mid 90s when I was keeping fish. So it's kind of a, over 30-year span of trends that have come and gone. And some of them are good that they've gone, and some of them are trends that have affected the hobby in a positive way. I don't know if I'm making any sense here, so let me just get into it. I'm going to start off with one that I think in order to talk about this trend properly, we have to give credit where credit's due. Back in 2010, I wanted to see if there was a way to make an overflow on my aquarium without drilling the glass of my aquarium. Because the tank was already set up. I wanted to just be able to add an overflow. And I went on this little thing that we call YouTube. And I did a search for overflows in an aquarium. And I ran into this channel that is a fascinating channel. And I'm very fortunate to be able to say, and you as well, that the creator that created this channel and produced all of the content has become a close personal friend of mine. But back then, of course, he was just a guy on the social media contraption that I would have never imagined would have eventually become a friend of mine. I'm talking about who was at the time Waru Joey. This young fella in Nova Scotia, Canada, little teeny guy, like very, very small person he is. I always pick on Joey for his size. He's a little shorter than me, so that's why I do that. But got to pick on people whenever I can. But I watched this video, and it taught me how, with PVC pipe, I can make an overflow for my aquarium, and I do not have to drill any holes in the glass. And it was amazing. And I built one, and it worked exactly to his specifications, and it worked beautifully. Why am I talking about all this? Because what he did, and this is where I was saying we got to give credit where credit's due. I believe Joey Mullen, the king of DIY now, his channel used to be Waru Joey, started the whole trend of DIY aquarium stuff. Whether it's building your own aquarium, your own filtration, your own devices like PVC overflows, whatever it is, Joey has taught you over the course of the last 15 years how, actually longer than that, I think it's 16, 17 years, how to do these things on your own to save money and to take pride in doing it yourself rather than buying something. The DIY trend is something that ever since then has been going strong. It's not a up and down thing. It's not like it was a thing for a while and then it went away. It's here, and I think it's here to stay, and it is absolutely one of those positive trends, and Joey definitely deserves credit for that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, when I first started building out the fish room and trying to figure things out like that, DIY was always around, right? I mean, it's people who've been keeping fish since the 70s or 60s will be the first one to tell you, oh yeah, man, that's not new. I've been DIYing things since I was, 5 years old in the 60s or the 50s. No, I get that. We get that. What we're saying is the trend, the ability to do it easily and to have a massive number of people gravitate towards that way really started with YouTube. It started with, and especially Joey, like you said, when I was building stands, I looked at his videos, and it wasn't just that he had the stuff that was out there DIY. He was the first one to do it well.
Yes.
Do it where you could actually follow along. And after watching the video, you're like, yeah, I can do this because I watched it, and he didn't leave out a bunch of steps. And that's the thing, even to this day, you'll see people who do DIY stuff or how to repair this, or, I was watching a video one time on how to repair a motorcycle, or not repair, but change out an exhaust on a motorcycle I just bought. And the person literally forgot two extraordinarily important steps. And I'm trying to take this old exhaust off, and I'm tugging like 20 minutes later. I'm like, either this thing is really stuck or there's another bolt here that they didn't talk about. And sure enough, I start pulling other stuff apart. I'm like, this thing was never coming off. But the point is, Joey did it well, and he did it early. And that has saved us. I don't even know at this point the amount of money people in fish keeping, and people who started fish keeping after YouTube became a thing, they have no idea what it was like before YouTube, before DIY, before there were cheap alternatives to do pretty much anything from building tanks, stands, all the equipment you could ever want, setting up fish rooms. It's a very different thing before YouTube came along, and before people who were able to explain it in a way that was easy to understand started doing their thing.
Yeah, back then you just had to figure it out. And that was not nearly as fun. One of the things that Joey did that I always appreciated, it's not so much anymore, and I don't mean to say that as if I don't appreciate him, but what I mean is, speaking of trends, the trend on YouTube has changed significantly. Way back in the day, Joey's videos used to be like 3.5 minutes long, and he would have so much information in that very short amount of time, and you felt like you got a thorough understanding of what it was that he was talking about, and he was able to do that in just a few minutes, because that's what people wanted then. They wanted that quick, plus the YouTube algorithm responded better to shorter videos back then. Now it's more longer, drawn out, more detailed, and his videos are very different now than they were back then. Still good, but it's a completely different style of video. But the point that I'm trying to get across is that he was able to give you so much information and make you understand it in a very, very short period of time. And that was fascinating, especially coming from me, being somebody that everything for me takes 15, 20 minutes. Like I can't explain something really fast. I was always impressed with the way he was able to do that.
Yeah. 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 It's changed fish keeping. And we'll talk about other trends, but this is probably one of the most important ones that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, because it saves people money. It gives people pride. Like I did that instead of spending money. Not everything saves you money. I mean, there's some projects that you can do that cost just as much, but still having that pride of you're the one that did it. It's very cool. And I think Joey introduced us to that, and not introduced us, but like you said, put it out there for everyone to see and did it extremely well. I promise we are not being paid by Joey Mullen right now. I just feel like giving credit where credit's due. But are you ready? You ready to move on to a bad one? And we're going to start off with a banger.
Well, that's great. So bring it. Bring the bad trends. Is it going to be as bad as bell bottoms or 1980s women's hairdos?
Well, you could say, because I could say that this trend was a trend. It's not so much anymore. It was a trend when I first got into this hobby. And it was, I believe, the worst trend that's ever been in this hobby.
Oh boy.
And that is, drum roll please, people are going to be upset when they hear me say it, feeding fish feeder fish.
Mm.
I understand every fish store, maybe not every one, but most fish stores still have tanks full of feeder fish. But back when I started in this hobby, half the stores, like half of the tanks were full of feeder fish because that's what everybody did. Everybody looked at their big ugly cichlids and their big oddballs and their catfish, and they would be like, well, the only thing you can feed them is live feeder goldfish. It was horrible. I fell for it for a little bit. I'm still not proud of that, but it was the worst. I don't need to go into all of the details as far as why it's a terrible thing, because I don't think it's a huge problem anymore, but there's still idiots out there doing it. And yes, I said it. If you are feeding live goldfish that you're buying at the pet store, that is an idiot thing to do. I will say it right to your face. Thankfully, it's not as prevalent as it was.
Yeah. I was told back in the 90s that was actually a beneficial thing to do. Like the best food in the world is to feed fish to other fish. And it can be nutritious, but it was just kind of an expected thing. I remember in the 90s going into the pet store and you'd go get those rosy minnows, and they'd all be skinny. And you're right. There'd be like 3 or 4 tanks. They'd be packed. There'd be like 2,000 of them in a 20 gallon. There'd be a ton of filtration. They'd just be flying around everywhere, or the feeder goldfish or the feeder guppies. And you thought you were doing the right thing. You thought, okay, I'm going to go buy, I specifically remember I'd go and buy 10 or 20, take it home to my 35-gallon Hex. And in there I had, don't judge me, bro, I had a Jack Dempsey and a convict cichlid. Somehow they got along. I don't know how, but again, in those days you were taught the fish would grow to the size of your tank. And so I would chuck those in there and they would gobble them up. And it wasn't that I got a ton of enjoyment, but I was satisfied with the fact that they were getting live foods. But we've learned that most of the time it's not necessary. And I don't think you're an idiot if you don't have a choice. Like, for instance, we had a Chaka Chaka cat. It didn't eat prepared foods. It would never eat prepared foods. It only ate live. Now, I didn't know that when Luke brought it home from the wholesaler he worked at. He's like, hey, I got this catfish. I'm like, dude, did you do any research? No, but it's cool. It won't get that big. Yeah, but it will only eat live foods. And so I found myself, believe it or not, digging into my multi-low boy because there'd be like a billion fish. And I'm like, well, this stinks, but here's a half dozen. And a day later, they'd be gone. So there are some cases where you're not getting away from that, but there's a lot of problems that come with feeding these feeder goldfish or rosy minnows. They're not healthy fish. They have been mass produced. They are in crammed tanks. They could be riddled with disease. Nobody cares because the expectation is they're coming in, you're feeding these fish to other fish, but you want to talk about a great way to introduce internal parasites to your fish that you care about? Feed live foods, feed live fish. And that's a great way to do that.
Yeah. And when I talk about this, I'm not even necessarily talking about It's mean, and that's why you shouldn't do it. Yeah, I do think it's mean, and it hurts my feelings to see cute little goldfish swimming for their life and getting eaten. Sure, but I'm talking more of that angle to it. The fact that there's not there's not as much nutritional value as what you would find in these prepared pellets and things like that, but also the introduction of disease and all of that, the potential. If you do find yourself in a situation where you have to do that, like you were talking about with that catfish, you did it, in my opinion, the right way, because you fed them food, even though I would have never been able to do that because I'm too soft. You fed them fish that you controlled. You produced those. You knew where they came from. You knew how they were raised. That's completely different than getting a goldfish that was raised with 6.4 million other goldfish in a little 100-gallon pond. You know, it's absurd. So, yeah, if you have to do it, you did it the right way. And my thing with them, I used to buy them like 50 at a time, and I would put them in a 10-gallon tank because the pet store was an hour away from me, and I didn't want to have to go there every day. So every day I would just scoop up a few out of that 10-gallon tank. It was barbaric. I hated it. And I was the way I fed my fish, I couldn't even see inside the tank. I fed them from behind. It's a long story. They were built into the wall, so I couldn't feed them from the front even if I wanted to. So I didn't actually see it happen, and that helped me a little bit to get away with it. But that was something I absolutely hated, and still to this day, I hate it. And I'm not as nice as you. I will say and I'm going to say it differently, though, than you did, differently than I did first. If you're going to the pet store and you're buying those skinny rosy reds or the comet goldfish that are in a tank with 3,000 other ones, that person is the idiot, not somebody who did it the way you did it. Because I would never call you an idiot.
Well, you know, what's funny too, as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, there are people listening to this podcast like, you fed your fish shell dwellers? Because in certain areas, those fish will go for like 25, 30 bucks a piece. I don't know why they do. But trust me, the multis in our area, they're like a $3 fish at the swaps. They're basically worthless because everybody in the Chicagoland area has them. The pet stores here have started to figure that out. Now at the retail, they're going for like 10 to 15, but it's a $3 fish. And so, yeah, I'd scoop them out by the net full because I had so many in there and just plop them in there and be like, this is the only thing I got. I'm not going to the store to buy them. And I didn't have any guppies at the time. So it's like, and eventually I gave the fish away because I was tired of doing that. I just didn't want to do that anymore. And so, yeah, the live fish thing, just be really careful. And I remember that would be something that pet stores would even show off. Like, hey, you want to see this predatory fish eat? You know, we'd walk in there as young teenagers into some of the local stores. I'll never forget it. The pet store owner had a pretty sizable comet goldfish. He's like, you want to see something cool? Watch this. He takes this fish, chucks it in a triggerfish tank, big triggerfish, saltwater. I've never seen anything like it. That fish it looked like it had like a circular saw for teeth and ate the middle of the fish, basically the entire midsection. You had the head and the tail, and somehow the thing was still moving around. And then it came back and ate the head and the tail. And I'm just like, and you got like the scales are like flickering all over the tank. And I'm like, that wasn't that cool, man. I've got to tell you, I don't need to ever see that again. I didn't. He thought it was cool. I'm like, dude, you're kind of sick, man. I don't understand why you thought that fish basically getting chewed up by a circular saw was at all interesting, because it's not. What are you going to do next? Like beat a kitten? I mean, I'm out of here, man. I don't need to see that again. Don't ever show that to me again.
He's probably going home watching videos of lions eating gazelles, and he's entertained by that.
Yeah,
it's like,
I guess. I'm one of those people, you watch those shows and I'm like, go zebra, you got this, man, go run. You know the lion, but that's nature. You know, the lion's got to eat eventually, but I never cheer for the lion. I'm always cheering for the zebra or the gazelle or whatever. It's like sprinting away. You're like, it got away.
I can tell you how crazy of a person I am. And I'm kind of embarrassed to admit this. I can see video, and I'm not talking about real life stuff. Like watching a movie, I just got done watching the series called Mobland, which is a fantastic series. About 1,000 people die in that show. And it's like, obviously they're actors. It's not real deaths, but I can see that all day. And I'm like, well, that's entertaining. Wow. Did you see how he did that? But if it's a dog or a cat or I'm like, oh, turn this off. I can't watch that. That's how soft I am. And also completely crazy because it doesn't bother me when it's people. It will when it's animals. So if I'm seeing a lion chase a gazelle, I'm not going to know how that ends because I'm not going to watch it. I'm turning it off.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a very particular bias against feeder fish, but I'm a softie. I get that. I completely understand. I was at a pet store last weekend and a guy walked in and was like, hey, could I get 10 of those feeder fish? And I just sat there like,
For what reason, pal?
I can't believe this is still happening. Jeez. So thankfully, it's not as prevalent as it was.
And you got to be careful too, because goldfish in particular, is it high iodine? They have a, I think it's iodine. Don't quote me on this, but if you continually feed fish goldfish, they can get poisoned by that. And I thought it was iodine poisoning, but I could be off. It could be something else. I'm going back off of memory from something I read probably 15 years ago or something like that. But you got to be careful because the goldfish in particular, not all live fish, it wouldn't happen with guppies or the Maltese I fed, but goldfish can mess things up.
Just don't feed feeder fish, and then you don't have a problem. It's easy with all
I'm
the
trying to
pellets.
think out there these days, besides that Chaka Chaka cat, what fish absolutely positively require live fish feeding and that wouldn't eat bloodworms, krill, shrimp?
I don't
Are
know
there
of
any
one.
out there?
I mean, if you're asking me, I don't know of one. In fact, the last time I experienced somebody telling me that, I've told this story before. I had my fish store. Somebody surrendered, I guess is the right way of saying it. Somebody brought in about 1.5 foot long Florida gar, and he said, "This fish will not eat anything but live goldfish." And I said, "Well, he's not eating that here." And the guy was like, "Well, he's going to starve." I said, "No, he won't." And I ended up starting the fish out with freeze-dried krill, the Tetra Jumbo krill, and then eventually moved them over to pellets. And I said the same thing that my mom said to me when I was a kid, and she said to about all of our grandkids. When they're hungry enough, they'll eat.
Yeah.
Like if I was sitting there at the table and I didn't eat my dinner, because it was back in the day, if you didn't, you had to eat your dinner. There was no way around it. And I'm not hungry. I don't want to eat it. And she would say, well, when you're hungry enough, you'll eat it. That's the way I took it, or the approach I took with the fish. That fish is not going to starve. When it gets hungry enough, it's going to eat the pellets that I put in there. And guess what? It did.
You want to hear a funny story about that? My mom tried that stuff with me when I was a kid. So my dad spent an entire Sunday making oxtails and he boiled them. It was the single most disgusting thing I have ever seen in my life, even to this day. So they put this boiled, I remember it had a bone, it had all this mushy meat surrounding it. They slap it on my plate with some vegetables that I already wasn't going to eat. And I took a look, and it was slimy. It was disgusting. I'm like, I cannot eat this. Now, my dad had been messing with this disgusting thing most of the afternoon, like, oh, you're going to eat it or you're not getting anything else. I'm like, I don't care. Go to your room. Fine. So I went off to my room. Yeah. Later on that night, I'm getting pretty hungry. I'm like, Mom, can I have a bowl of cereal? She's like, nope, your oxtails are in the fridge. I'll warm them up for you. I'm like, I am not eating those. I'm not. She's like, then you're going to have to go to bed hungry. I did. Woke up the next morning and, I get my bowl out. She's like, oh, no. You still got the oxtails in there. She thought she was going to teach me a lesson. I'm like, I'll go to school hungry. I'm not eating that. She put the oxtails in my lunch. At this point, my stomach is growling. I mean, I'm like getting ready to I had not eaten since like the afternoon the previous day. Came home. They were in my lunchbox. She's like, you really didn't eat these? I'm like, nope. I will starve to death. I was like, I wasn't going to eat them. I'm like, I will literally starve. I will sit here and eat my own arm before I'll eat those things. They finally gave in. After school, they gave me a snack because my stomach was growling and, I was probably going to die pretty soon. But if you put something in front of me that I don't want to eat, I'll win that. I will win. I will win. I will starve to death.
But I mean, okay. Well, maybe you're the exception, but guess what?
But I
that
mean,
Florida
dude,
gar didn't.
I don't think you understand how disgusting that was. Slimy.
Oh, I wouldn't have
boiled.
eaten it either.
Yeah. So
I'd have been right there with you. my mom used to do that with seafood. I've never been a seafood eater. I grew up in the northern neck of Virginia. Well, I grew up in Northern Virginia, but we were from the northern neck, and that's all fishing country out there, like crabs, all of it. And my whole family ate that stuff up like it was the best. I've never liked seafood. So the nights that my mom would make seafood, I just didn't eat dinner. Nope. She didn't make chicken nuggets for me. It was like, if you're not going to eat that, then you're just going to go hungry. All right.
Fine.
Well, that's how it was back then. But, we also had to walk to and from school uphill both ways, right? In the snow.
That's right. And luckily for us, fish are not, you're right. The vast majority of fish will eventually, chaka. I tried a million different things. All right, I'll give you some time, because those fish don't always eat every day. They eat maybe once a week anyway. So it's like, I was running into a problem where, like, how long am I going to let this fish not eat? Because it was harder to dial in as opposed to a fish that normally eats every day. But I'm curious, if you are somebody who's listening to this and you have got, if not your own personal, like, oh, here's a fish that wouldn't eat for me, but I'm talking about, just generally speaking, a fish that will not convert to anything but live. I'm not talking about frozen. It has to be live. I would be very interested to hear that.
And before you get mad at me for saying you're an idiot if you feed live foods, if you found out that your neighbor was feeding his dog live chickens, you'd be pretty upset about that too. Why is this any different? So, don't be mad at me if I.
But would you? I'm like, it's a chicken. They're kind of ugly. Well, I mean, if I found out my neighbor was feeding the dog live, I mean, the chicken's like screaming and stuff. I don't know if I want to hear that, but I don't know if I'd be all that upset. I'd be like, well, I guess if that's really what you need to do is feed your dog live chickens. Now, if it was kittens, you don't want to have your dog eating live kittens. That would be bad. I would be upset about that. Or maybe like squirrels, because they're kind of cute and fluffy, or bunny rabbits. That would be bad. But chickens? That's what
maybe chickens. Okay, maybe chickens wasn't the best example. They sure are delicious, though.
Yeah, they are.
So I understand why the dog would be after them, but
no. You don't eat them live, do you?
Certainly not. No.
Okay, just want to be clear about that.
But I did have a chicken in my yard that got eaten by my neighbor's dog, but the chicken also belonged to my neighbor, so couldn't really
cancel
be mad
each other
about
out.
it.
Yeah.
We named him Bob. He was our little pet. He what you call it, perched on our fence at night. It was adorable, and we lost.
Now
Bob.
he's gone.
He's gone. But anyway, let's move on to another good trend, and this is one that you may fight back a little bit on this one, but I think it's a good trend. The reason why I say you might bark at me for this is because you might take it in a direction that I'm not intending for it to go. It'll all make sense in a second here, but I'm talking about the dirted aquarium. Using dirt as a substrate, capped off with sand. Now, I have to drop names here because it fits with the conversation. I love Lou from Fatherfish. I think he's awesome. A lot of people are going to credit Lou with this trend. That's incorrect. I'm not saying he hasn't popularized it more, but Dustin Wunderlich was talking about dirted tanks back in like 2006 on YouTube. I mean, YouTube was still, the two videos that were on YouTube were me at the zoo, and if you know, and Dustin Wunderlich's dirted ghetto tank. Like, those were the only two videos on YouTube at the time. That's how long ago Dustin was doing this. I think dirted tanks are awesome. I do not like filterless. That whole thing, I'm not a big fan of that. So this is actually something that can go the other way and be a bad trend. If things aren't done properly, it can be a bad trend. But I like dirted aquariums. I think it's really cool. I think it's great for plants. I think it's a great way to incorporate nature into the aquarium. I just want to make sure credit goes where it needs to go. Lou has done big things on YouTube, but it was Dustin that did that first, and it's all right there on YouTube. Just go back. You'll see. He was the first.
So the dirted tanks are fine as a trend. What's not fine are the militant dirted tank people that I can't
Mm.
stand, because these are the people who get on a Facebook group, get on a comment section and say the only way to do it, the only right way to do a tank is a dirted tank, capped with sand, filterless plants. And it's like, you either are ignorant in the truest sense of the word, you don't know a whole lot about keeping fish and all the different types of fish that are out there, or you're just so dead set on a way, and then you're just so egotistical that you don't understand that there are other ways to keep fish other than a filterless dirted tank. So which one is it? Because I have no patience for this anymore. I don't. It's my trigger, if you will. There are a billion different types of fish out there that can't be kept in a dirted tank capped with sand and still have it look like a good tank, right? There are so many fish that dig crazy, like crazy diggers. If you're someone who likes to change things up, that's out. If you want to rip plants up and put them somewhere else, that becomes a mess. And so you are limited in terms of the types of fish that you can keep. You're limited in terms of what you want to do with your aquascape. It can be fine. And yeah, the trend, there's no doubt, there's no argument that the dirt, when you do it like Father Fish, and he gave me a package of his dirt one time, by the way. Thanks, Father Fish, if you're watching this, because I got stopped at the TCA thing or whatever that is, the airport
TSA?
police, because he gave me a bag of dirt and then a bag of his minerals that basically looked like a big bag of drugs. And I'm passing through TCA with this thing in my bag, and they're like, "What's that?" I'm like, "It's
It's
aquarium
dirt.
dirt." They opened up my all my suitcase. They're digging through the bag. They're opening the bag. They're testing, like, yeah, it's dirt. But it took like 15 extra minutes to get through this thing. Nice one, giving me a bag of dirt when I got to get on a plane and white powder. So anyway, there's no debate that when you put it's very economical when you put that down, you cap it with sand, and you want a planted tank. That's a great source of nutrients. It is. I'm not debating that one bit. But what I'm debating is the fact that it's the reason why I dislike the trend to a certain extent is because of the people who don't fully understand fish keeping and don't fully understand the other types of fish that are out there that are not just planted community type fish. And pretty soon you're like, oh, this is the only way to do it. I'm like, well, then you haven't kept these other dozens and dozens of fish that can't do this. So that's the only part I don't like.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, I think in our last podcast, that there's a lot of people that were militant about that, and they've since come back to the good
They've
side.
swung back down to equilibrium. They've realized this can be okay, and it's got its place, and it can be very useful, but it's not the way to keep fish. It's not the only way. It's a way to
Right.
keep fish.
Public aquariums don't even do it. So, that's got to tell you something. I mean, there is no such thing in this hobby as the only way.
Well,
Just
and I think you mentioned it one time. You went to someone's house that was having tremendous algae problems. They had a dirted tank with no plants because they saw on the internet, oh, the dirted tank, the dirted substrate is the way to go. They didn't have any plants, and they wound up with tremendous issues in that aquarium. So that's the other problem too, is you get people who only get half of what's being said, and then they go halfway, not realizing you just made a mess for yourself.
That's right. That's absolutely true. Hear what you want to hear and say, "Oh, that looks appealing. I'm going to do that," and not getting the big picture of the whole thing. Yeah, that's definitely it. And I do have to give myself credit here because I have it on my list of good, but it says dirted aquariums, comma, can be bad. So it's kind of one of those, mid things there where it's neutral. It could go either way, but I do think overall it's a good trend. But I'm talking specifically about, dirted aquariums, not necessarily, the whole filterless thing. And all. You can have filtration in a tank that has a sand cap dirt substrate. Of course, you're not going to run an FX6. That would be a nightmare, but you know what I'm saying. There can be some type of filtration on there. And on that note, what is the kind of filtration that you would probably use in a situation like that? Well, that's my next, dare I say, bad trend. This one's going to get me in a little trouble. Not with you, but it's going to get me in a little bit of trouble because I'm not sure how to say it other than to say sponge filters are a bad trend. Here's what I mean by that. If you go back to like 2012, 2013, maybe even 2014, you would go on YouTube and you would see every tank under the sun that was just filtered with sponge filters. Tanks with Oscars in them, tanks with big ugly cichlids in them, monster tanks. There was a guy, I'm not going to say his name because I really enjoyed his channel. He's not around anymore. He had big, like 300-gallon tanks with the big, stupid sponge filters in them. And it's like, why are you going to do that? I mean, they were everywhere. Everybody was filtering their tanks with sponge filters. I'm not saying sponge filters are bad. I'm saying they have a place. There's a certain application where they work beautifully, but not every situation calls for sponge filters. And you saw them everywhere on YouTube. So they had to go into my bad category.
Well, and here's why. So at one point on YouTube, fish rooms were all the rage, right? Oh, look at my fish room. Let's walk around my fish room. Fish room tour this, fish room tour that. Every 5 seconds was a fish room tour. And the benefit of the sponge filter there is it's an air-driven system, one central pump, sponge filters all around. It's really the only way you can do a big fish room and not have to install, a power station behind your home. So naturally, people who were keeping these fish rooms, we're talking about, oh, look at the benefits of sponge filters because we can, and I've got the same situation here. I've got a fish room that's primarily run on sponge filters, but I did a video, still get a lot of comments on this video. I made a video that said sponge filters are the worst. And oh my gosh, just like the dirted tank people, you've got the committed sponge filter gang, and that sponge filter gang, which we call SFG, sponge filter gang, that they've actually got a name in the community, FSGs. You would have thought I kicked their baby. I mean, first of all, if they watched the whole video, they would see why I titled the video the way I did, and it was really kind of a play on words. They didn't, obviously, the people who were like calling me every name in the book, accusing me of being the worst person ever, didn't watch the whole video. But the point was, in the video, they have their benefits, like you said. But to claim that these are, in any other situation besides running a whole bunch of tanks, they're the worst. They are the worst because they're the worst at mechanical filtration. They don't do any better job of biological than any other type of filter. The flow that they give is pretty much, it's the worst type of flow that you can have in an aquarium. It's not horizontal, and the bubbling and stuff. Oh, it oxygenates the tank. No, it doesn't. The bubbles are popping at the surface, so it's not doing that either. They're ugly, which is fine. Again, I've got them all throughout my fish room. They're very ugly. They're not the easiest thing to clean. They're not necessarily simple because you've got an air pump that's not a simple machine. And the parts, as we talked about before, when it comes to problems with different types of filters, they break. The air hoses get stiff. The internal components of a sponge filter break. The sponge filter itself can start to deform. You got to replace those too. And so I just don't like it when people get so stuck on a way that they fail to see. And I guess it's human nature. When you are committed to a certain thing, all you see and all you try to defend are the benefits, but then you do yourself a disservice and everybody else when you're not willing to state, yeah, you know what? I made this decision and there are advantages to the decision I made, and there are disadvantages. Be honest about that. Mm-hmm. Be honest. There are advantages and disadvantages to everything. And if you're not capable of seeing the disadvantages of the decisions that you've made, you're only hurting yourself. And the sponge filter thing is, it's one of those.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. It's like they were everywhere. You would see, you're absolutely right. Fish room tours were a really big thing back in the day. But you would see also people that would have, 55-gallon tank in their living room. It's just their quote unquote show tank with two big ugly sponge filters in the corner. And it's like, is that really what, I mean, first of all, they're loud. They're ridiculously ugly. Like, is that what you want as your showpiece? Well, I mean, listen, if that's what you love, then go for it. That's fine. But I don't know. To me, it just seems really dumb. But everybody on social media would lead you to believe that they were the best thing ever. You cannot get a better filtration type than those. And again, I would agree in certain circumstances, but not all of them. Certainly not anything that I do. It would be ridiculous to have, you want to add one as a little supplementation, okay, fine. But to have that be your sole filtration, no, that's ridiculous. And is it a trend that came and went? I don't really know because I don't watch a lot of fish content. Maybe
Yeah,
it's still out there.
well, I think just in terms of the industry and sales, the sponge filter was predominant on YouTube, and a lot of people gravitated towards them because they saw these benefits. But just like anything else, whether it's dirted tanks, whether it's keeping cichlids, whether it's sponge filters, eventually you have to be honest with your situation. Be like, yeah, you know what? Everybody was saying these were the best, but my tank doesn't look that good. And
Hmm.
so I went back to a hang on back filter, or I found an internal canister or an external canister or a hang on back. And now my tank looks better and I freed up some space and I'm not looking at this thing anymore. And so a lot of people, probably the majority, they start to recognize after a while, after the newness wears off, that there's some disadvantages to these things. And for a lot of people are like, yeah, I don't want to do this. Not for one or two tanks. I always tell people, ask me all the time, at what point do you start considering sponge filters and air driven systems? I'm like, if you've got 8 or 10 tanks and they're in the same room, you might want to start thinking about it just because of the energy involved in doing hang on backs on 10 different tanks. But outside of that, like back here, if this was, if I've just got these 5 aquariums on this side, there's never going to be a sponge filter in any of these tanks because I don't want to look at them, I don't want to hear them, and I don't want to see them
That's
in
right.
in these tanks. So canisters all around for those. Next door, we're going to wind up having 19 tanks. Guess what you're going to see in every single tank? At least 2 sponge filters. It's not because I love them, it's because they're necessary.
Well said. Nothing more needs to be said about that one. You nailed it there. I'm going to go back to good though. One of my
Okay.
favorite songs from the 90s, by the way, if we're going to get back into the music thing, Matchbox 20, Back to Good. What a great song that is. I want to go back to the good side. When I started keeping fish in 1993, probably 12, 13 years after you started, because you're so much older than me,
Yeah.
I there the way you would set up a tank, and again, maybe this was just me and the people I knew that had fish tanks, which wasn't very many, and the way I saw things, you just basically put whatever you wanted to in the tank, whether it was a pirate ship, some fake plants. There was no such thing as SpongeBob pineapples, but it would be, the treasure chest that opens up and the bubbles come out. It would be all of those aquarium decorations. I never heard of any aquascaping type thing back then. It was, and again, maybe it was just the circles that I was in, but I didn't know anybody that was setting up an aquarium to be this beautiful art piece. It was just whatever goes, goes. Maybe a piece of driftwood, whatever. But aquascaping became a big thing, and this is something that it was trendy a while back. It's been trendy, and it's probably going to stay trendy because it's an amazing thing. Aquascaping is a very, very good trend. I love it. I'm not good at it, but I love it. It's something very cool to watch other people do, and it's very cool to admire. It's a trend that I'm actually very, very happy with.
Yeah, I am too. And I don't see, we were just talking about this on a live stream last night. We were talking about some of the trends that we've seen recently, and aquascaping to me is definitely one that came on real strong in the late teens, and you had a lot of channels with a lot of very talented people, more talent than I could possibly imagine, that had this eye for making an aquatic ecosystem look beautiful. And I think it's one of the things that has made fish keeping, if it's becoming or maintaining its popularity, that is undoubtedly a reason why, because it doesn't matter what type of tank you have, what size tank, there is always a way to make it look beautiful and make it look natural. And for a lot of adults, that is the goal. You want to have a slice of nature in your home. And most people aren't satisfied with the colored gravel. And there's nothing wrong with the plastic decorations, plastic plants. If that's what you want to do or that's what you do, that's totally fine. But for a lot of people, they want that slice of nature. And to get that, you want the rocks, the wood, the real plants. And that's not going away. I think maybe the people who create at this point, it's like there's only so many aquascapes you can look at and watch and see that are unique. And so maybe the people who are creators are not as like that trend might be kind of going down a little bit unless they've got something really unusual that they're doing. But my favorite thing at the Aquashellas in terms of going to sea was always the aquascaping competition. I would spend more time in that area than I would at any other, besides the booth, but any other area at those things. And I'll tell you, the aquatic experience was the best by far at bringing people a visual experience because they had the aquascaping competitions. They encouraged vendors to make some pretty nice aquascapes. And that was awesome. There's really nothing like that anymore. But yeah, I don't see that going anywhere.
I don't either. And speaking of Aquashellas and the aquatic experience, one of the things I am absolutely fascinated. I'm fascinated to watch those aquascape. It always fascinates me. Like, I don't get it. I don't see it. I don't understand what it is that this guy's doing. Why is he breaking that rock into a million little rocks? Like, this doesn't make sense. But to see that vision come together when it's all said and done is absolutely incredible. And there's always, like you said, there's only so many things you can do that are going to inspire awe in anybody. But there's always one. Every time I go to an aquascaping contest, it's not always the one that wins, but there's always, I'm looking down the row and I'm like, that's nice. That's nice. Whoa.
Yeah.
There's always one that's like, whoa. And I love that. I absolutely love, usually the name Jeff Miyake is attached to that one, by the way.
Yeah. That is 9 times out of 10. If he's there, that is usually my whoa.
Yep. He's going to be the whoa. It's absolutely fascinating to watch. I love watching art do its thing or artists create art. That's always really cool. I agree. That's not something that's ever going to go anywhere. And I think that I'm just going to kind of piggyback on that one. I've been using that expression a lot today, piggybacking, because my next trend is another good one. But since my goods outnumber the bads and it has to do with aquascaping, we'll stick with it. Again, when I started keeping fish, I don't remember seeing live plants for sale at the pet store. I never wanted one. It was never something that I would ever entertain. It just seemed like another thing to take care of to me. But planted aquariums, look behind you. You're a rough and tough biker guy with a big old beard and tattoos, but you've got those gorgeous planted aquariums that are beautifully aquascaped too, might I add. It's a beautiful thing, and it also happens to help pay the bills for me. So maybe I am a little bit biased, but the planted aquariums to me are something I never thought I would have ever been fascinated by, but I definitely am. That's another trend. I can't see it going anywhere.
It's interesting. As we're mentioning these trends, especially the good ones, I can't help but think all of these the trends are due to the original trend, and that is YouTube. It's what made these things popular. It's what showed people on a large scale, look what's possible in the aquarium hobby, whether it's the aquascaping in general, and now we're talking about planted tanks. I think what it did, and I know it did for me, is when I watched other people keep live plants and show this isn't hard. You can do it. Doesn't take a lot of effort. It doesn't take a lot of know-how. Here's the ones to start with. And you do that and you have some success. You're like, wow, wait a minute. This actually really isn't that difficult. And I think without that, when you just go to a pet store and an employee says, oh yeah, we got all these live plants, even if they, like you said, they didn't really. You go back 15 years ago and most pet stores, if they had live plants, they were in a tank and they were all just kind of mashed in there. But it was one thing for someone at a pet store to be like, oh yeah, these aren't that hard, just put them in there and plant them, blah, blah, blah. But when you see somebody, a creator doing that on YouTube and they're having long-term success and they're giving you updates and they're saying, here's how we did it. You're like, oh yeah, I could do that too. And I know we've talked about it before, but when it comes to the aquarium hobby, it is exciting to see the changes in the ecosystem. The fish are always going to be swimming around. They get a little larger, but to watch those plants fill in is it's an additional level of excitement when it comes to fish keeping.
Yeah, I mean, it adds a whole new world to what it is that you're doing, and it's something, like I said, I would have never imagined that I would have been fascinated by plants. I am as excited about plants now as I am about fish, and that would have been unthinkable to me 10 years ago. But it's really, really cool aspect to the hobby. It's something that was new to me several years ago, but I think it's another layer that's very, very cool. And it's always surprised me talking about pet stores. I mean, I can remember way, 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 way back, like the big box pet stores having the plants in the tubes, and they still have that. But it wouldn't be like they would have a lot. And it surprised me that even now there isn't more. Like I remember seeing a tour of one fish store on YouTube, and they had like an entire row of tanks that were plants. And I was like, well, that's the only one I've ever seen. Usually you'll have this big elaborate fish store. Even my favorite fish store on the planet has all these beautiful tanks and one tank with plants in it. It's like, that surprises me. I'm not saying they're a bad business. I'm just saying, as popular as plants are, it surprises me that you still go into a high-end fish store and there's only one tank with plants in it.
So the question is, something we're going to be addressing in a podcast that we're going to be doing next, is maybe it doesn't make sense for a pet store to do it because of websites like your own and so many others where you can sell them a lot more economically, potentially.
Sure. But then again, I sell fish food too. And the pet stores all have that too.
Good point.
So,
valid point. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like they could do it. I think that there's also, I don't know how everybody does it, but I keep a lot of the plants that I sell on my website. I keep them immersed, and that doesn't really show well in a fish store, an immersed plant. So they want to submerge theirs, and maybe they have problems with them melting back or something. I don't know. I don't know what the deal is, and I don't want to talk for any store in particular, but it just, I would think that as trendy as it is, you've got stores that are, very much on the bandwagon of aquascaping, and they sell all of the rocks, and they have little dojos, and they have all these things, but one tank with plants in it. It's like, oh man, you're missing out on an opportunity there. But maybe I'm just not seeing it. I don't know. I'm not one of those people that believes whatever it is that I see, that's the way it goes. I know there's other things out there. I don't know. But anyway, you ready to go with a bad one that's going to be fun for me to talk about?
Sure. Let's go bad.
I don't even, okay. It has to do with social media. And it is a trend that, again, I don't think is going to go anywhere. Somebody did this a while back. I've done this. You've, I'm sure, done this. And I think it's, I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's here to stay because they get views, and it's unfortunate. And that is the YouTube creator in the thumbnail holding a bag of fish food with a big question mark on it, or the fish is blurred out, and they're buying new fish, and the title is Buying New Fish For, and it's every week. They're buying new fish for something. This rubs me the wrong way. I'm not calling anybody out in particular. Well, that was dramatic with the pleco behind my head, wasn't it? I'm not calling anybody out by name or anything in particular, but there are creators that seem to be buying fish every single week for a new thing. And it's like, where are all these fish going? You've bought 700 fish in the last month. Where are they all? Like, that to me, it puts it out there that the people watching are inspired by that. They're awe-inspired. They're like, oh, I could buy all these fish all the time. And they're going out and they're doing the same thing, emulating the people that they see on YouTube. That's a problem for me, and I don't like it.
Well, it goes right in line with I just set up another tank. I just set up another tank. I just set up another tank. And so it's the same thing. Well, one, you can't have one without the other. So the people holding up the fish bag, like, oh, I just got these. I just got these. I just got these. Where are you putting them? Well, they're setting up another tank. And pretty soon they've got 80 aquariums like we had. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as you're properly caring for them like we did. And you're not just blasting through fish, buy some fish, and then get bored with them because you need a new fish for the next video. So you move those and you're just constantly rotating them in and out. Again, there's nothing wrong with that if that's your business, right? So when we imported fish, we brought a whole mess load in. The whole point was to sell them at the swaps. But if you're just perpetuating this irresponsibility of set up an aquarium, stock it, keep the fish until you get bored, do whatever with the fish, and then bring in more. I don't think that's the message that we want to send. I don't know about you, but one of the most annoying, I've been thinking about this the whole video that we've been recording this. I don't know why, but the most annoying thing to me is the influencer. Oh, we've got the influencer. And I'm like, oh, I hate being called that. And I don't use that word because first of all, I don't think that most people who are on social media are not influencing nearly as many people as they think they are. First of all, I don't think they have the influence that they think they do. And second of all, sometimes the influence they have, as you're alluding to, is bad. It's just bad influence. Buy these fish, keep buying, keep setting up tanks. And that's why you and I would hear at the Aquashellas, oh yeah, when they were all in their homes, yeah, I got an aquarium, then I got 5, then I got 10. And then a couple years later, what do we hear? Oh yeah, I had 10, but then I went back down to 3 because, I had lost my mind a little bit. Well, part of that was what they were seeing on YouTube. And I can't help but wonder when people see my fish room, especially when I had the 80 tanks, I always try to be so open and honest. I am not maintaining these tanks. I pay people to do it. I have 2 boys. They are employees of Primetime Aquatics. One has one side, one has the other. Now, Luke's gotten older. He's finishing up college. Eli's down here doing everything. I pay him to do that as an employee. If I had to do this, I would not have time to maintain the 30 aquariums that we currently have in the house. So be careful with the trends. Buying all the fish, setting up all the tanks. You turn your hobby into a job real quick.
That's an absolute fact. In fact, I've actually considered scaling back myself, and we have scaled back a little bit, some intentionally and some unintentionally. If you recall the story I told about my 90-gallon leaking, that one, we didn't make the decision for that one. But anyway, we're down 1 tank now. But yeah, it bothers me because it's putting it out there that it's okay to be just constantly going out there and buying fish. And the one person that pops into my head right now when I'm talking about this trend, it's not Joey Mullen, by the way. I don't know why I even feel like I need to say that. Joey's done some of those videos, but Joey is always reworking things in his fish room. He's always, building new tanks, and he's always doing these things. And Joey's a responsible fish keeper. And if he gets rid of some fish, he'll say he got rid of these fish, gave them to the pet store or whatever it is. I'm talking about somebody that's not named Joey Mullen that they're not setting up new tanks. They're just getting new fish all the time. And it really bothers me. But I'm done talking about that because I don't feel like making any enemies. I got one more good and one more bad. The bad one is a doozy. And if you put up an argument with me on the bad one, I'm going to be shocked. But we have to wait. We're going to do one more good one before we get to that one. And this is another thing. It's kind of 2 in 1. It's 2 in 1. It's the tiny aquariums with shrimp in them. This is another thing that you go back to the turn of the century or the early 90s, the only shrimp I ever heard of were either the saltwater shrimp or ghost shrimp that people would use as feeders. The concept of keeping little red and blue and yellow and green shrimp in an aquarium and setting up a tank specifically for them was unthinkable to me back then. Again, maybe it was out there and it hadn't infiltrated my area yet. I don't know. But I never saw anything like that. And then all of a sudden, I feel like Flip Aquatics needs the credit for this.
100%.
They just exploded in popularity. Everybody loves shrimp. Everybody's keeping them. And I think it's super cool to be able to have, to me, the only acceptable situation where you have a little 2.5 gallon aquarium. You got a bunch of shrimp in there. Perfect. I love that. Incorporate everything we've been talking about on the good trends, a nice little 2.5 gallon tank with a really cool aquascape and some live plants and shrimp. Oh, how cool is that? Have it right on your desk. Love it. I love that trend.
Yeah, it is a cool trend because, and I think that flows right with, like you said, the smaller aquariums, the nano tanks, that kind of thing, where they're super easy to keep. They don't require a lot of space. They don't require a lot of maintenance. They're not super expensive. A lot of them are all in ones. And then you're like, okay, what do I put in this thing? And again, I think that's where YouTube comes in because we can guide people, and the responsible YouTube creators will say, hey, if you got a 2 gallon tank or a 1 gallon, throw some shrimp in there or a snail or two. Don't put fish in the tank like that. But you do have options, and they can be very interesting options. I agree. Flip Aquatics, when I stumbled upon his channel, I think he had like 2,000 subscribers or something like that. And at that point, I don't even remember seeing shrimp in any of the pet stores I was at. I don't remember seeing shrimp in pet stores until the 20 teens.
Right.
And we went to a lot of pet stores at that point, fish stores. So I think once they got popular on YouTube, it took a long time, I think, for the pet stores to even kind of catch up to that. Like, oh, wait a minute, people are interested in these things. Let's start carrying them too. And even to this day, unless you go to like one of the more like boutique sort of fish stores that are kind of focused on nano, it can be tough to run across pet stores that actually carry shrimp. And I think that's okay, because what happened there is the private retailer or the private breeder was actually first to the scene. It wasn't the retailer in this case. And that's why I think the retailer is always going to struggle in the shrimp area, because what made them popular was social media and people who were breeding at home breeders. By the time the retail jumped on it, it's like, well, wait a minute. Shrimp, first of all, they ship very easily. Doesn't take a big bag. You put a little breather bag. They ship well. You usually, success rates compared to fish are going to be much higher. They're selling them at a certain price, and retail just couldn't compete with that. And I still think that's why a lot of retailers, you don't see tanks lined up with a bunch of shrimp usually, because you can go online and just find a much, much better deal than most retailers.
Yeah, I guess shrimp and plants are going to stay primarily an online retail thing. And you know what? I'm okay with that. As a plant retailer, I am not going to argue about it. But it is true. You don't see them in stores all that often. I have seen a couple of stores that have like separate setups with little cube tanks that are almost like beta setups that have shrimp in them. But even then, you don't see nearly the selection that you would online. So, yeah, props to Rob and Amanda over there. I don't know that I would have really even known anything about pet shrimp if it hadn't been for them. And I can remember being fascinated the first time I saw that they were an option for an aquarium. It's very, very cool. And my wife absolutely goes nuts for them. So that's a bonus too. Are you ready? You ready for the big bad?
I'm ready. I'm a little concerned, but I'm ready.
This is the final boss. This is the one that when you win this, you win the whole game. When you beat this final boss, the worst, possibly the worst trend, in my opinion. I don't think you're going to disagree.
Okay.
But this is one I would say it to the owner of the company to his face. If I was to meet him, I think it's the dumbest thing. And I said it, so I'm already buried deep enough. I'm talking about glowfish. I don't know how you feel about it, but me personally, I'm not a fan. I'm going to judge or guess by your reaction. You disagree, so let's fight about it a little bit.
So, first of all, we did an entire podcast. I believe we did a whole podcast about glowfish, didn't we?
We
at
did.
One point?
Yeah.
Early
Yep.
on? Okay. So, I'm torn. I don't necessarily. People ask all the time how I feel about them, and it's going to be hard for me to make an argument because I'm indifferent to the glowfish. And I'm indifferent because it's not like they're dyed like some of the parrotfish where they're being intentionally harmed just to sell something that looks really ridiculous. The glowfish have a gene that's inserted that, to the best of my knowledge, outside of maybe glow bettas, the gene hasn't really had a negative impact on the health of the fish. Like, I've had glowfish before, glowdanios, the skirt tetras, and they live just as long as the regular skirt tetras did and the regular Danios did. So I didn't really notice a whole lot of health issues. They do get kids potentially involved in the hobby. They stand out, which could be a bad thing. And I'm sure I'll let you kind of expand on that. So I do see the advantages. I see, okay, an attempt to get children involved in the hobby. It doesn't appear to me like globe bettas. Totally, I think that's why most of them don't sell. They go blind. So I would not touch those again. We had them. Friends of ours had them. Every situation, the globe betta went blind. So, but now you're getting glow angels, glow Cory cats, glow everything. And I will say the glow angels was a dumb idea. I know we mentioned this in the video. Here's a pro tip for you, glowfish people who are in charge of glowfish president. Don't make glowfish from fish that are super easy to breed, because I'm seeing glowfish everywhere now that are not in the stores because it's super easy to breed angelfish. And so they just select for the ones that are glowing, and you circumvent the market. So you might want to stick with the ones that aren't going to be spitting out babies all the time. But anyway, I'll let you talk about why you hate them.
Well, here's the thing. I don't hate them. I think they're very cool. I think you see a tank full of glowfish, it's neat. The glow angels, mind blown. They're awesome. They look really cool. But as I said in that podcast episode, my real conflict is I think the vast majority of these fish are, mommy, that's cool. I want that. It's the novelty of it. It's the little kid. I'm going to take good care of it, I promise. And then they just don't. And mom and dad aren't interested. They're not going to take over. Sometimes they do, and they become fish keepers, and that's great. I've heard that story many times. But a lot of times you're basically dooming these fish to a horrible, absolutely miserable life. And when you're making fish specifically to appeal to kids, then you're asking for that. Don't misunderstand me. I am not in any way saying I don't want kids involved in this hobby. That would be ridiculous. I want them all to be in this hobby, but I want them to be responsible. I want the parents to be responsible and understand this is no different than getting your kid a cat or a dog or a hamster. It's going to require work, and you're probably going to have to do some of that work. But they just don't have that kind of an attitude when it comes to fish. It's just a novelty thing that gets set in the corner, and they don't care about it like they would if it was a dog or a cat. So for that reason, I have a problem with them. I don't have a personal problem with the fish. I think they're really cool. A bright pink angelfish. Are you kidding me? That's awesome. But I don't like the way they're marketed. It is direct towards kids, and if we're being honest with each other, most little kids are not going to be responsible enough to take care of them, and neither are mom and dad. So for that, I don't like them.
There's one other issue with the glowfish that I think we have to be really careful about that isn't as obvious on the surface, and that is if you take a look at the first glowfish were mostly Danios, then you had the skirt tetras, and then they branched out to the rainbow sharks, the Cory cats, the angelfish, and there's a few others as well. The problem is when you look at the glowfish kits, those tanks are not that big. Normally you're dealing with a 20-gallon or less, and the overwhelming majority of those fish are not. The Danios are fine, the Cory cats are fine. Nothing else is. Even the skirt tetras get way too big. I mean, you're talking about a fish that can get quite large. Angelfish, the rainbow shark, absolutely not. And so you're starting to venture off into these glowfish that require much larger tanks, have more aggression. And I don't know really, when I look at the Petcos and PetSmarts and Pet Supplies Plus of the world, that they're offering that 55 to 75 gallon glowfish kit. That's just not happening. And so I think the fish creation has definitely outpaced the aquariums that are available for these fish in terms of the size.
You're not going to convince mom to buy little Timmy that's 6 years old a 55-gallon aquarium. Right. And that's my whole point. It is something that's directly marketed towards kids. That's why they don't make the big tanks, because nobody would buy them, because adults aren't interested in those. No. And you're not going to buy one for little Timmy. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, because it's very true. It's only the little tanks, and they are way too small for most of those fish. So There you go. I'm going to get off my soapbox now. I'm going to stop being the old man yelling at you to get off my lawn. That's all I've got for the good and the bad. I'm sure there's more out there though that we're just not thinking about.
Well, and that's where the community comes in the comments section. Did we leave something out? What are some trends, either good or bad, that you have noticed, especially more recently, that are out there? How do you feel about them? What are they good? Are they bad? They're going to cause issues. But as always, hey, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. We're going to be back same time, same place next week. Have a great week, everyone.